Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Mr. K is Wrong, where I look at the Facebook posts of somebody I know that's named Mr. K, and I debunk his right wing nonsense. So, the meme in question today, it goes like this. It says, white slaves were sold for centuries. All our ancestors took slaves, sold slaves, or were slaves. You're not special. Black people owned and sold slaves. Asian people, Native people, and Middle Eastern people owned and sold slaves. Everyone's ancestors participated in slavery. It wasn't exclusive to white people. Stop trying to make people feel guilty for things they didn't do. And there's an additional comment beneath the meme. And still today, and still are today, BTW, there are more slaves today than ever in human history. And commentary, beneath that meme. And I'm going to go over why this meme, even though it seems like it's a very factual meme, and you might have heard similar arguments yourself. Maybe you've made similar arguments yourself. But nevertheless, it does kind of miss the whole picture or the bigger picture. And I'm going to explain why. The meme tries to flatten history so all slavery looks the same. It treats every example across thousands of years as interchangeable. That's not accurate, and it's often used to downplay the specifics of American slavery. So that context is actually very important here. It is not really in dispute that slavery existed in practically every human society, certainly on every continent. Nobody's disputing that, right? I think the main point of contention is the relevance to modern society and how the prevalence of certain forms of oppression are still relevant today more than other forms. So, yes, many societies practiced slavery. That doesn't erase the fact that the transatlantic slave trade and race based chattel slavery in the United States were distinct in scale, brutality, and structure. People weren't enslaved because they lost a war or owed a debt or something specific like that. They were enslaved because they were born black, and that status passed to their children. Their bodies, labor, and family ties were legally treated as property for generations. That system shaped the economic foundation of the United States and its racial hierarchy long after slavery ended. So, those are facts that you shouldn't really try to sidestep by pointing to other examples of slavery across the world. It's actually an attempt to distract if you're trying to, you know, downplay what happened here. So pointing to white slaves or everyone did it isn't really a meaningful rebuttal. It's a distraction that avoids acknowledging what American slavery was and how its effects still show up in housing, wealth, policing, and political power today. So the meme also frames any mention of history as an attempt to make people feel guilty. Most people who talk about American slavery aren't asking individuals to carry personal blame. They're asking the country to understand the story honestly so we can handle the consequences that still affect people's lives. It's not like the attempts to get reparations are just asking people for personal checks or something like that. No, you are not being held directly responsible for the actions of other people. It has more to do with policy solutions than anything else. And the added line that I talked about, there are more slaves today than ever, that's another misdirection. Modern human trafficking is a serious problem, but invoking it this way sidesteps the conversation rather than addressing it. It's like saying, don't look at the house fire we caused, look at this other fire somewhere else. Now, to the present political climate, the discussion is even more interesting. While the meme pretends to warn against guilt trips, it fits into a broader pattern where the Republican Party has been pushing policies and rhetoric that minimize the history of racism while advancing measures that disproportionately harm people of color. So, a few examples: there are state level attempts to restrict how schools teach about slavery, Jim Crow, and systemic racism. These laws don't fix anything, they only make it harder to understand how inequality was built. And then you have the military is now actually removing elements of black history from their specific displays, like on websites or at any sort of museums or things like that. So there are efforts to limit immigration also by painting immigrants, especially from Latin America, Africa, and Muslim majority countries, as threats. Or Donald Trump even made it more racist recently by comparing Somalians to garbage, and that rhetoric recycles old racial fears to justify harsh policies, racial fears, and racial prejudices. And there's the open courting of neo Confederate groups and symbols. We've seen Republican officials defend corporate monuments, or not corporate, Confederate monuments. I guess that's a Freudian slip. But anyway, Republican officials have defended Confederate monuments. They've adopted lost cause language and attend events organized by groups that celebrate the Confederacy rather than confront what it stood for. And, you know, they also have policies such as voter roll purges, strict ID laws, and racial gerrymandering that will disproportionately suppress the voting power of Black, Latino, and Native communities. So when you place the meme in that context, it's not just a bad historical argument, it's part of a political tactic: minimize the legacy of slavery, deny the existence of current racism, and shift attention away from policies that reinforce inequality right now. If slavery becomes a universal, vague, everyone did it problem, then no one has to take responsibility for addressing the specific harms that shaped the United States and that are still shaping the United States. The honest path is actually simpler: tell the truth about the past, look directly at what's happening now, and fix what's in front of us.